I'm Alex from Moog. We're here presenting a video for Production TV, which is basically, I want to give you a little bit of a kind of intro to Subtractive synthesizers. We're here at the very noisy Music Production Expo in 2016 with the Moog Minimoog. So the Minimoog is basically, it's a very important synth, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because the Minimoog set the template of what synthesizers were. And back in the early 70s when it was first invented, synthesizers before that were big modular, like telephone exchange type beasties, where musicians were required to rewire the machine each time to make a sound. If you didn't plug the cables in, then the machine didn't make a noise. And those machines were amazing because they were very flexible. Obviously we have modular synths now, and there's a resurgence of modular synthesis with Eurorack and other formats. The Moog themselves make modular synths again. But at the time, an engineer at Moog called Bill Hemsath identified that there was a need or a value in having a preset architecture, a kind of fixed flow, because he'd noticed that the musicians that were using these big modular synths were basically wiring up the same thing each time. He recognized that there was a sort of basic patch that actually was the most flexible and immediate thing. And so what he did was he took bits and bobs that he found, like literally an oscillator from over there and a filter from there, tinkered and put it all into a case together and called it the Min. And it was the birth of what became later the Minimoog. And it was just this very simple arrangement of blocks. So I'll kind of take you through it on here. So this is the Minimoog. And if you do know about synthesizers, you'll be looking at the Minimoog thinking this is very obvious and this is very straightforward. It doesn't do anything particularly exciting. Now the reason is that this genuinely was the first synth that was laid out in this way. And what it is a subtractive synthesizer. What that means is it works by having oscillators, which are bright, fuzzy sound generators. They sound like this. Very bright, fuzzy sounds, and you literally subtract from that bright sound using a filter that filters out harmonics, frequencies. So the filter is here, and if I do that, you hear this kind of like muffling of sound. It's literally like covering your ears. And the filter is just subtracting away frequencies. And what this filter is doing is at a little point that the knob is, it's subtracting all of the frequencies above it. All of the high, sharp sound is getting removed as you pull that down. I've got delay on it, by the way. I can turn that off. So you just hear. And that's kind of like, that's sort of the most important aspect to bear in mind. All it is just an oscillator, buzzy thing feeding into a filter. The only other control that's actually directly affecting the sort of sound is volume. We have a volume control on the machine, obviously. And that what happens with the rest of the machine is really just getting little modifiers, like invisible helping hands, to adjust those three functions for us, to adjust the oscillators, to adjust that filter, and to change the volume. So to give you an example of what I mean, I really like that. I really like doing this, having this sweeping kind of sound. And on the Minimoog, we have an emphasis control, which you may know as resonance, which has got a very kind of pleasing sound. All emphasis is doing is it is emphasizing, peaking, it's adding frequency, adding kind of volume at the point at which it's getting rid of all the high frequency sounds. And I really like that, and I want an invisible hand to control that for me. And what that would be, or what the ideal function to do that, is a thing called an LFO. And an LFO is just an oscillator, exactly like the thing that's actually making the audible sound. That. But an LFO is a low frequency oscillator, and it's so low that we can't hear it. If we directly connected it to the speakers, all you would see is the speaker cones moving forward and backwards very slowly, probably blowing your speakers up. So on a Minimoog, on the new version of the Minimoog, the Model D, we actually have an LFO down here, and I can make it affect this function by turning up this. So as I increase that mod wheel here, you hear it working. So it is literally moving that control for me. So an LFO is just like it's a control voltage. It's an invisible helping hand, and we can map it to control that sound for us. And so we can start to like animate the sound, you know, add kind of life to it, which is all well and good. But the other thing that we want to do is we want to change the volume over time. We do that with the loudness contour, as it's called on here. I mean, on other synths, it's called an envelope generator. And that's just a way of changing of like a voltage over time, of adjusting the volume knob, in this case, over time. I'll show you here. So if I turn all these settings down, these are the contour generators. We have two, one to control the filter and another one to control the loudness of the machine. So if I do that, it just makes a clicking sound, doesn't really do anything. But as I increase the sustain, you start to hear it. And because I've got the attack and the decay on this machine set to 0, it just goes on and off. If I increase the attack time, it will fade in. And then on a Minimoog, if I have the decay button on and I push the decay time, when I lift my finger off the key, it will decay. So after I've let go, it will continue to play a sound. On most synths, that's called release. There's a dedicated control for it. The Minimoog, by virtue of being the first, had its own slightly idiosyncratic way of doing it. It actually has attack, decay, and sustain. And the decay is doing a double duty. It's actually controlling both the decay time and the release time. So but that's on most synths, you would know that as attack, decay, sustain, release. And in this way, you can shape the sound over time. And if I do it with the filter as well, perhaps if I do this, so I'll bring down that decay, the attack time. So we've just got an on-off sound. And then if I do this, this gets this to control the filter. So now the filter is being lifted in the same way that the loudness was being brought in before. So an envelope generator is there to help you shape the sound over time, as an LFO is there to help you make the sound go wobbly over time. And then really the rest of it is just finding different sweet spots and combinations. On a Minimoog, you have multiple oscillators, which is great. So when we have more oscillators going together, it just sounds lovely and kind of, let me just get that going. Just 1, 2, and then you've got a third. Just a very full and lush sounding machine with a beautiful innate character, and the Minimoog just sounds amazing. There's a reason it was so popular. And that's kind of it. That's a sort of just a basic overview, like an intro to synths. Subtractive synths will tend to have a bright oscillator with a filter that cuts away at that oscillator, literally chipping away at it like, you know, a sculptor would chip away at a big block, and then volume control. And then the rest is just ways of adjusting those three different things. There's lots of other tricks and sort of cool stuff that you can do with synths, but obviously that's for you to play around and experiment with. If you're looking at buying a synthesizer, Minimoog might not be your first choice. Obviously, as a slightly dearer machine, Moog also make much more affordable things like the Workstat. The Workstat is like a little black box. We have them over here, and that's just got all of the things that we were talking about here. It's an oscillator, a filter, an LFO, and a little envelope generator or a contour. And I would recommend getting something like that has, doesn't have menus, and is just a simple machine where all of the controls that you need to make a sound are on the front panel. That's, I think, is the easiest way to learn. If it's not making the sound that you want, then you just have to find the right control and adjust it. Nothing is hidden away from you, and it will help you to just have it all in front of you and then just experiment. The key is to play around and explore. The best way to learn is to get one. Fortunately for you, there are so many choices. If you're looking to get a synthesizer, analog synths from Moog and many other companies are readily available. We've never had more choice, so hopefully you will explore synthesis yourself and have lots of fun. Thanks very much. Cheers.